another 2 years, which means that even though the governor has appointed some more strong environmental-minded commissioners, the balance is a little off, and we may see policies and changes coming out of an environmental management commission that we don't necessarily like. So we still have to really keep our eye on the ball with all of these commissions. The governor also just appointed 3 people to the Public Utilities Commission. They had to go through the legislative confirmation process. So yet again, that mixing and mingling of executive and legislative branch. Only one of the 3 was actually put forward for confirmation. The other 2 are sitting in limbo. So we'll have to keep a close eye on what happens with that.
Is that true for all the commissions or just them?
Just certain commissions. Yeah, and that's a great question. Just certain commissions. And the reason why for this one, public utilities, that's paid. They make a lot of money. Not all of these are. Environmental Management Commission's not paid. Coastal Resources is not. Energy Policy Council's not. Building Code's not. These are all volunteer. You're volunteering. Public utilities, it's a job. They have an office. They have a staff person. They're there all the time. They get a full, and it's considered to be a place where former legislators go and make a little extra money before they retire. Now, that's not for all the commissioners. We do have some strong commissioners on there right now, but we need to get some more energy efficient, renewable friendly, forward thinking, ready for the next wave of technology folks on the commission for what's coming. They also do telecom and water. You know, so think about rates and all of that goes through the Public Utilities Commission. Energy Policy Council was in the news a lot the last couple of years. It's housed in Department of Environmental Quality. In the last several years, it was the council that was making a lot of news about solar panel waste and agricultural lands and conflicts with solar on that. That was all coming through the Energy Policy Council. The governor has made some new appointments to that council, but again, that council, the balance will not shift for another 2 years. It's still predominantly McCrory appointees. Building Code Commissions, we're waiting for the governor's decision. He's got several names, open seats that he's considering, including the chair. And we're waiting to find out that, and this is huge timing, Building Codes Commission, because they're getting ready to do the codes again. So all of those codes that we got in, the energy efficiency code and the voluntary hero code and the back of it, the addendum, you know, all of those are on the table for rewrite this year. And so we need a strong Building Codes Commission to make sure that we keep our commercial and residential codes at a level, in my mind, for energy efficiency and protecting the environment.
Safety.
Just check and make sure I said everything when I say it. Oh, so one more thing on boards and commissions is that sometimes these are all standing committees, standing commissions. These exist in perpetuity. They were created by the legislature. They're in law. From time to time, the executive branch and the legislative branch can create temporary commissions or task force and appoint people to them to address a certain issue. So those of us who've been working on climate change for a long time in North Carolina will remember the glory days of the Legislative Committee on Climate Change that was enacted in 2005 and actually existed in the legislature until it was not reauthorized in 2010. So that committee was a legislative committee. It wrote a report on climate change and the actions North Carolina should be taking to prepare and adapt for climate change. And of course, when the Republicans took control of the General Assembly in 2010, they did not reauthorize it and that work halted. But you will see that from time to time, those task force and committees and commissions get popped up. So here's a couple of websites and apps I love. If you've never been on the General Assembly's website, I encourage you to check it out. And I can pop out and show it to you again. The General Assembly's website has a place for you to look up if you don't know who represents you. You can go here to who represents me. It's got a citizen's guide. You can draw down members, find a bill here. Tells you when they convene again, so October 4th. You can listen online, see the calendar for the House and the Senate. And if you scroll down, and you're a policy legislative geek like I am, You can see all of the Senate, excuse me, redistricting committee website. You can look at the House redistricting website and read the notes and see what they talked about, what's going on here. So lots of good information in the calendar, of course, when the committees meet. So you'll see right here, this is in between sessions. You know, they've got the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee on General Government's going to be meeting in October. September 19th, they've got the judicial redistricting. They're looking at redoing the judicial districts. So this is where you come to look and see, like when the Environmental Review Commission schedules their meeting, it'll be up here. You can also sign up on this website to get email notifications. WREL has something called the WRAP with Laura Leslie, and if you've never checked it out online, I recommend it. At the end of every day that they're in session, they do a very short, less than 10-minute wrap of what all happened on the bills and where things are going and everything. It's really short and concise. It's a great way to kind of keep up on what's going on. And then the State Board of Elections I put on here because that's where you can go to find out who represents you locally. So if you're not quite sure who represents you on the city or county level, go to this ncsbe.gov, look that up. If you're into apps, if you have a smartphone, I have two apps I absolutely love. They do not know I exist. I do not get any kind of kickback for mentioning them or anything like that. But one's called Countable, and it tracks everything going on in Congress. And you go in and you can personalize it on your interests. So you say civil rights, environment, economy, education, whatever your issues are, and it will notify you when bills are moving. It also lets you communicate with your members of Congress through the app, and it polls people on, there's a vote coming up, what do you think? So I find it really hard to keep up with what's really going on in the debate and everything, and this app has made it really easy and concise and user-friendly. All Politics is actually a news aggregating app, and I love it because it aggregates news, and you open it and it's two columns, and on the left is all the news that all the left-leaning media is talking about, and on the right it's all the news that all the right-leaning media is talking about. So in one shot you can see the conversations, and like I said, I encourage people, listen to the people who you think are your opposition. If you don't like Rush Limbaugh, listen to Rush Limbaugh. Listen to what he's saying, because that's the opposition. That's what they're listening to and learning from. You know, I strongly encourage people to make sure that they're mixing their media channels up and not just funneling down one side, whether left or the right. So I feel like it's important for me to stay purple in the work I do. So All Politics app helps me do that because I see the news coming from both sides. So with that, I'll take your questions on this part of the presentation, and then Kathy asked me to have a question for brainstorming, so then the rest of the time we'll discuss the question and some ideas. So, yes?
The last point you made there on the apps, those are for federal legislation, right?
Countable is federal, yeah. WREL really, I think, is the only group I've seen, you know, best way to be tracking legislation like that. They used to have a bill tracker, they don't have it anymore. There are groups like the North Carolina Conservation Network that track environmental bills in North Carolina, but you have to be a member or affiliate group. So like NCIPL, North Carolina Faith, Power and Light, is a member, Sierra Club, most of the big environmental groups are, so you can always ask to get on their listservs or emails to stay up to
I mean,
date
I
with
get it directly from the Conservation
that.
Network.
That's because you were a director.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So tell us more about the WRAL, what's the source for that?
It's called the WRAP with
WRAP.
Laura Leslie, and they do like the Twitter at WRAP. So they're on Twitter, and if you go on WREL's website to the politics section, they'll pop up. And even when session's not going on, they'll usually do about one a week, and because we're having so many sessions, they're every couple weeks they're on there. But if something pops up, like if the gerrymandering case, the congressional district starts to move forward in Supreme Court, then they'll do like a wrap on that. Yes.
I did not hear you well when you talked about that who works part-time and they have jobs at home. You said our representatives?
Yeah.
The whole General Assembly is
And
part-time.
they have low salaries,
Yeah, I believe it's less than $20,000 a year.
Yes.
so they almost have to have a double job.
And this is what a lot of people would say is part of the problem, is that they're up for re-election every 2 years, so they're always running for re-election, they're always fundraising, but they're also trying to maintain their jobs. So it makes it difficult for everyday people to run for office in North Carolina, because if you don't have family money to lean on, or a wealthy spouse, or a spouse who's able to support you, then it's a struggle financially, especially if you're talking about coming all the way from where I grew up out in Western North Carolina. You're driving all the way to Raleigh and back every week, or you're getting a place to live in Raleigh. And sometimes they have roommates, sometimes they get their own place, and they won't go home every single week. But financially, it's a strain on them. They don't make that much money.
And that changes from state to state?
Yeah, every state's different. And every state legislative process is different. And Virginia meets 1 month a year. They meet in January, that's it. They meet for 1 month, their legislature. Alan?
But the legislators, they have staff people too, so how does that get paid for?
Oh, well, the staff are full-time. If they have a legislative assistant,
Yeah.
they're full-time salaried state employees. And they are typically there year-round in the offices. So
They're not
answering
necessarily
the
making
phones.
money, but
Yeah,
they're not paid that well.
They're not paid
no,
that well.
very-
No, they're state employees. They haven't had a raise, adequate raise in many years. So, but no, the legislative assistants are there year round, and they answer the email and the phones and open the mail and manage the office while they're out. So if you go in between sessions, if you go down to the General Assembly, there are people there working. It's very quiet.
I have a question about the writing of the legislation. I know sometimes companies or lobbying groups will write the bills, but how do bills get written and get to the legislature so that they introduce them?
Well, it's a good question. There's a lot of different ways. Sometimes individual legislators will draft it if they're experienced enough. Sometimes interest groups, national or state level groups, have staff that will draft suggested policy and give it to an elected official, or work with an elected official to draft legislation. And sometimes a legislator will go to the General Assembly's staff, which there's a whole bill drafting division in the General Assembly of people whose job it is to help write and research these laws. And they're legally trained. And so sometimes if you don't have an interest group, or if the legislator themselves isn't experienced enough to be able to write it, or knowledgeable enough on that issue, that policy area, they'll go to the bill writing team and sit down with them and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'd like to do, can we do it? And oftentimes, they'll do legal research, they'll look at if anybody's done this anywhere else, another state, there's draft language they can use from somewhere else. A lot of people talk about ALEC. This is the Legislative Exchange Council nationally that has pushed some what people brand as far-right legislation in a lot of states, cookie cutter, and funnel it down to the various members in different state legislatures. That exists no matter which side you're looking at. So, I think we have to be really careful. Stakeholders are stakeholders, interest groups are interest groups, no matter what side you fall on. And just like with gerrymandering, the Democrats did it, the Republicans did it. There are no glory days to go back to. So I want to caution you all as advocates to keep an even-centered mind about those kind of things. Any other questions? Good questions.
It was about a semester's worth of information for me.
Oh, yeah, well, good. I'm so glad to hear that. You know, I've been doing this for over a decade, so over 17 years now. So I oftentimes don't know what people don't know anymore. So that's great to hear. Thank you.
I don't know.
Alan.
Yeah, what I didn't realize at all was this Office of Administrative Hearings. So that website you showed us was ncoah.com?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and /rules to get to the
Yeah.
rules. ncoah.com/rules.
So do you know of any rule-making processes that we should be interested in, and maybe we should be one of 10 people to object?
That's a question for Grady McCauley at Conservation Network. I'm not tracking any North Carolina legislation or rules right now, but Grady would know. I will say keep an eye on Gen X. The stuff going on in Wilmington,
Yep.
it's like coal ash from a couple years ago. And with coal ash, there was legislation and rules that had to happen. We might see some emergency or temporary rule processes initiated around Gen X. So that's something to keep an eye on, I would say. And the
Yeah.
pipeline would be another one.
I heard today that they've had to stop. They can no as of today can no longer dump any Gen X into Cape Fear. So
Right.
that was
I hadn't heard that yet.
that was
They're
today.
talking about doing private well testing too, but yeah.
Yeah.
So the rules loophole thing is better for stopping things than promoting things, is what I'm hearing, is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of bills that just go right on through, but
Yeah,
if it's
but-
controversial, it'll be objected.
So you can stop it, but then it goes to the legislature and
It's
very
a right,
likely,
yeah.
yeah.
You gotta ask yourself, is it worth stopping?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, in a way, I'm more confused than I was when I started, and let me tell you why. Because I had fairly conventional, well, I think it's conventional ideas about advocacy, as you arrange a meeting with your legislature during the session, and you write letters. And now I'm seeing that it depends on when in the session it is, and, you know, that it's just not clear, it's less clear to me how, I thought that was being an advocate, and I've worked up to actually going to the legislature. Now I'm actually not really clear where to intervene in the process.
So that is being an advocate.
Yeah,
There is a role for people, everyday concerned citizens, being in the halls of the General Assembly while they're all there, walking the halls side by side. That's really important. Don't get me wrong. I think that is very important. Lobbyists need to be there. Concerned citizens need to be there. That needs to be happening. My point I want you to hear me say is that in order to truly move the needle in a conversation with your elected official, you need to have their undivided attention, and you cannot get that from them now in Raleigh. There's too much going on. And a lot of times they end up not even being able to make the meetings now because things are happening so fast all the time and they get pulled out into different things. You may get 5 or 10 minutes with them if you go to Raleigh and try to sit down with them in between committee meetings, or a committee meeting runs over and you're waiting an hour for them to come. My push for everyday folks like you, prioritizing meeting with them between the sessions, is because you can just drive down the road right here to wherever they live, or meet them at the coffee shop, or invite them here to come see the solar panels, right? They don't have a committee meeting to rush off to. There's no one else standing right outside their door. There's not a lobbyist hanging over your shoulder waiting for you to get out of their way and talk to the elected official next. You know, it's just less rushed. They can pay more attention to you. You can have more of their time, and you can actually have time to have a dialogue. And I think that that's what gets lost now at the General Assembly, is that things are so hectic and so busy, and everyday folks, you know, get really excited. And like you said, you know, some people have to work themselves up to go down and do something like that. It takes a lot of courage. I remember the first time I went, I was scared. I was so nervous. You know, but you know that changes. That dynamic changes when you're at home here in Chapel Hill and you're just meeting at the coffee shop, or you're like, hey, can you come meet our group? We've been learning about the legislative process, and we want to show you what we've done with the solar panels and show you how much money we're saving, and we're putting that into programs to help people in our church. that is going to do more to educate your elected official and move them to where you want to move them to than a hurried 5 to 10 minute meeting that you're anxious about in Raleigh. That's my point.
Okay, and then I'll give other people a chance, but our legislatures are so much in sync with where we are that it's hard to know what.
Orange County, this part of Orange County legislators,
in
yeah.
Orange County, I mean, we're pretty much in agreement, so what is our role as advocates in working with people that,
Locally?
yeah, like, Greg Meyer and Berlinsco and so forth.
I mean, it's support. It's moral support for people like Craig Meyer. Please keep fighting. Don't give up. Don't resign. Keep running for re-election. What do you need? How can we support you? You all are blessed to live in Orange County. I live in Raleigh. Raleigh is not Orange County. And not everybody has members in the General Assembly like you all do. So I think it's more of a matter of how can we support you? How can we feed your soul, nourish you? What self-care do you need? They don't need more letters and emails and support. They don't need education, right? Sit down, listen to them, find out what's going on. What are you hearing from the other members on this bill? And is there is there a member, maybe you have a friend who lives in Burlington, and you can talk to that friend about the issue, and Senator Representative Meyer can say, well, we're really trying to work on so-and-so on this bill, like, anybody in this area that you could talk to, and like I said at the beginning of this, I honestly believe it's this one-on-one getting back to the kitchen table with folks and talking through issues in a loving, compassionate way and finding the common ground to move forward from that's going to shift this paradigm and move us away from the environment being a red or a blue, like a blue issue, not a red issue, when really it's a purple issue, right? Ow.
So are there any people that we should, that we could speak to who are on the opposite side that would make sense? That even though we have local representatives that are.
Well, actually, that kind of gets into my question. So I'm gonna table that and come back to that because I think it's really important.
Obviously, you have our two senators.
Right.
And the national
on the federal level, yeah, you have two.
But local in North Carolina.
It's different because you're in Orange County.
I mean, should I go and call up Phil Berger and
No.
try to meet with him?
No.
And try to.
Well, you can, but no.
I mean, you can. Yeah, I think it's important
Or
for
is there
people
some
to
committee
only
member,
communicate
or
with their members of the
is
General
somebody
Assembly.
And head of the rule committee or in the utilities.
Well,
committee.
yes, committee chairs, absolutely. So the head of the environment committee, you could request a meeting with, absolutely. You could ask to speak to, the Speaker of the House would probably be a better option than the President of the Senate. Mitch Gillespie has been very open to having meetings on behalf of some of my clients. He's met with Moms Clean Air Force and Medical Advocates for Healthy Air and some other groups to talk about some of these issues. So there are committee chairs who oversee, should be open to statewide contact. But if it's not your member, you gotta be really careful about that.
Right.
So a couple of us met with our representatives back in the spring in Raleigh, and it was like you say, it was crazy. One of the pieces of feedback we got was, I mean, we're on their team and they're on our team, but the feedback we got was that the people in the House and Senate in North Carolina don't hear much about people being concerned about the environment.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't hear it. It's not what comes up in general. That's crazy.
And I honestly don't know if it's not that they're hearing it or they're choosing not to listen to it. And I think that there's better ways we can go about that work, which gets to my question that I'm going to put to y'all. So I want to get to that. Can we shift? How much time are we out of time?
What time is it?
Well, we're at the end of the time,
Okay.
so go ahead and ask your
Well,
question.
That means it's perfect.
given the current political reality on the federal and state level, how are we going to get anything done? That's the question you all are asking, and that's the question I was going to ask you all for brainstorming. And my idea to kick this off for you all was to consider political appointment. So locally, there's a lot of opportunities to move policies and shape change in the city and county government. And now with Governor Cooper, there's hundreds of boards and commissions with open seats that he's appointing people to. And there's a very short bench of qualified, knowledgeable people to be appointed to these seats. And on the local level, there is a huge opportunity to affect change, because what did we talk about at the beginning of this? The local level is making more decisions that are impacting your daily life than anything else. So have any of you ever considered being appointed to a political office? Have you applied?
Oh, I served as county commissioner in Chatham County as a temporary when the other person left and moved to Colorado
Oh, wonderful.
until there was another election.
Thank you for your service. That's wonderful.
And then I'm on the planning board over there.
And that's appointed.
Yep.
Yes. So, what I want to encourage you all to think about is federally and on the state level, it's like banging your head against a brick wall. And for everyday folks, that can get really frustrating. We're going to be working on these issues for a very long time. But one way that a lot of people don't pay attention to actually make change happen is to get in the system and work within it and make system change happen. There's a huge opportunity for this. Whether it's civil rights that you're interested in, you're concerned about what's going on right now around race, there is a board for that. You know how they say there's an app for that? There's a board for that. So I encourage you all to think about, what is your heart soul song? You know, what's your passion? What's pulling you? What makes you excited to work on? What are the skills that you have to offer that local government or county government could benefit from? We need more people who care about the environment on every board and commission, not just the ones I put up here about the environment. It doesn't always have to be Parks and Rec. We need people on the planning, we need people on the water board, we need people on all boards and commissions. Arts commission, it doesn't matter what your passion is, we need people who are environmentally minded everywhere. Because what we're working on, addressing climate change, the causes and consequences, is going to take everyone. It doesn't matter what your heart song is, there's a place for you. So if I can do it, if a rural girl who grew up pretty poor in Western North Carolina could figure out how to work in the system and become a 2-time political appointee, anybody can.
For governor.
And I really hope you all will think about spending your volunteer time on that, and maybe the couple hours or more that you spend a month on social media, and take that and put it into volunteer service in your community and make changes, positive changes in your community. So that's my idea to leave you all on, what can we do when you can't really work with the federal and state government. So thank you for having me tonight. And I'm happy to hang around and answer your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
One more question.
Oh, I forgot to switch to my hair. Soar out there. Good luck.
What are they?
Okay, very good.
Republicans?
It's a heron.
Aaron.
You
I
have
one
another
more
question?
for you.
Yes.
I'm the chairman of the Advocacy Committee for Habitat for Humanity of Orange County. And so I spent time in the crowded offices in Raleigh. And of course, we have some very, very strong supporters of Erla Insco and Valerie Fouché and Greg Meyer. What would you recommend locally in the way of boards or commissions looking for affordable housing, which of course is really tied to environment?
So I'm not familiar with all the Orange County boards and commissions. I would have to look in and see because each county and city have different ones to make up. So we'd have to look and see who's in charge of that and what opportunities there are. But that's something I do, is work with people on figuring out the path, which one, how to do it, what the application process is, how to network for it and get the appointment. You got to start with what board or commission is working on that issue, and then who has the authority to appoint to it. So it might be your city council that's appointing those people, or the county commissioner that's appointing them.
I'll buy you lunch soon, we'll talk about it.
Okay, sounds good. Deal.
By the way, I was watching WRAL on the news before we came here.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden, there was a notice put up, screen went blank, and it said, the channel has requested that they be removed from the UVerse, that's AT&T system, which we opposed. And that was it, they couldn't get any more TV than the channel 5.
Oh, really?
So I don't know how that works.